Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the cradle of sands, the foundations of pre-Islamic Arabia. We're going to uncover a thriving, deeply connected world of traders, warriors, and poets that existed way before Islam transformed the Arabian Peninsula. This is a period of history that gets misunderstood a lot, but honestly, it's incredibly rich and absolutely crucial to the world we live in right now. So, let's jump in.
Seriously, what actually comes to mind when you hear the phrase pre-Islamic Arabia? Take a second and really think about it. I bet a lot of us automatically picture this endless, isolated desert wasteland, right? Just completely disconnected from the rest of civilization, inhabited only by wandering nomads braving the harsh elements all by themselves. But as we're going to see in the source material today, the reality was way more complex, super dynamic, and honestly, just a lot more fascinating than that simple image.
And that brings us to a major paradigm shift we need to make right off the bat. We've got to ditch this myth of the isolated, empty desert. The reality, Arabia was actually a bustling, highly strategic global nexus. It literally served as a bridge connecting the major trade routes of Africa, Asia, and Europe. It was this vibrant crossroads where different cultures rubbed shoulders every single day. And understanding that crossroads is absolutely essential because it fundamentally shaped world history.
Moving into Section 1, the foundation, geography, and society.
2 million. That's 2 million square kilometers of vast territory covering what we now know as the modern Arabian Peninsula. So we're talking Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. And the geography here? It was extreme. Central Arabia was dominated by these harsh, totally unforgiving deserts and mountains. But that contrasted sharply with life-saving oases scattered around, and the highly fertile agricultural lands down south, which actually got seasonal rains. This intense environment completely dictated exactly where and how people could even survive.
Because of that extreme environment, two distinct but deeply codependent lifestyles emerged side by side. On one hand, you had the nomadic Bedouins. These guys had to be in constant motion. Their whole existence revolved around herding camels, sheep, and goats, just constantly chasing seasonal water and grazing lands. Then, on the flip side, you had the settled urban populations. They built permanent, thriving communities around the coastal settlements, the major trade routes, those supercritical oases, and the fertile south. And here's the key. These two groups weren't living in bubbles. They relied heavily on one another for trade and ultimate survival.
Now for Section 2, tribes, survival, and poetry.
Okay, so in pre-Islamic Arabia, the idea of the rugged individual just didn't really exist. The tribe was the absolute bedrock of society. I mean, it provided your sole source of identity, your physical protection against the elements and rival groups, and your entire social standing. Without that sacred, unbreakable loyalty of a tribe backing you up, survival in the harsh Arabian desert was practically impossible. It was a simple rule. You protected your tribe, and your tribe protected you.
Because everyone relied so heavily on the group, certain core cultural values were fiercely protected. We're talking courage, hospitality, generosity, loyalty, and honor. These weren't just nice personality traits. They were literal social currency. For instance, guests were treated with this extraordinary, almost legendary level of respect. But there was a dark side. These deeply held values, combined with the need for tribal strength and the lack of any central government, meant intertribal warfare was incredibly common. A dispute over resources, or even just a slight to a tribe's honor, could spark multi-generational conflicts that lasted for decades. So, in a society with absolutely no mass media, how do you keep track of these alliances, celebrate your victories, or, wage psychological warfare? Well, you use poetry. To preserve these rich traditions and brutally mock their rivals, ancient Arabs elevated oral storytelling into an absolute art form. Poets were the highly respected ancient equivalent of journalists, historians, and influencers all rolled into one. Think of their massive poetry competitions almost like ancient, high-stakes rap battles. A genuinely gifted poet could elevate their tribe's status across the entire peninsula, or completely destroy a rival's reputation.
Moving on to Section 3, trade routes and wealth.
Just think about the sheer scope of this commerce. Arabia was the essential middleman, moving the ancient world's most lucrative luxury goods across vast continents. We are talking about highly prized frankincense and myrrh heading to the Byzantine Empire, spices traveling to and from India, and textiles and precious metals moving between Persia and East Africa. These caravan routes were basically the superhighways of the ancient world, and Arabian merchants were the ones entirely running the traffic.
And naturally, controlling those trade routes meant unbelievable wealth and power. Take Mecca, for example. It became this critical commercial hub precisely because of its strategic location along those major trade arteries, which was paired with its already deep religious significance as a sanctuary site. But this massive influx of trade did a lot more than just fill the pockets of local merchants. It actually exposed the entire region to a vibrant melting pot of new ideas, new cultures, and new philosophies pouring in from every corner of the known world.
Section 4. The Great Ancient Kingdoms.
Thanks to all that incredible wealth generated by trade, powerful mega-kingdoms flourished here. Down in the south, you had the legendary Kingdom of Sheba, famous for its staggering wealth, along with Himyar, Ma'in, and Kataban. Up in the north, the Nabateans built this awe-inspiring trading empire, with their stunning capital of Petra carved straight into the rock face. And these weren't just loose confederations of tribes. These were highly sophisticated governments. They had advanced architecture, complex irrigation systems to literally conquer the desert, and immense commercial networks tying Arabia directly to Rome and other global powers.
Which brings us to Section 5, a crossroads of religions.
It is absolutely fascinating to look at the religious breakdown of this era, because pre-Islamic Arabia was never religiously uniform, not at all. While various forms of polytheism were definitely widespread, with tribes worshiping different local deities and maintaining sacred shrines, they certainly weren't the only ones there. Deeply established Jewish communities thrived in several key cities. On top of that, Christian tribes and entire Christian kingdoms existed in both the northern and southern parts of the peninsula. Thanks to constant trade and migration, religious ideas were always crossing borders, making Arabia a true crossroads of faith.
And that sets the stage for Section 6, the pressure cooker. Right around the 6th century, Arabia found itself wedged directly between two massive, competing global superpowers. To the west, you have the Byzantine Empire. To the east, the Sasanian Persian Empire. And both of these giants were desperately trying to expand their influence. They both wanted control over those incredibly lucrative Arabian trade routes we talked about, and they fiercely competed to secure alliances with various Arabian tribes and kingdoms to act as buffers and proxies.
So when you combine everything we've covered in this explainer, you can see a perfect storm brewing. You've got expanding long-distance global trade, bringing in insane wealth and new cultures. You've got the rapid spread and mixing of diverse religious ideas. And you've got shifting political alliances forced by the crushing pressure of the Byzantine and Sasanian superpowers. This incredible convergence created the exact, high-pressure environment needed for a massive, world-altering movement to eventually emerge.
And that really brings us to the core takeaway here. Pre-Islamic Arabia was this thriving, incredibly complex cultural crucible. What you should remember from this explainer is that the modern world and the massive global religion of Islam were born from this exact, highly connected nexus of merchants, poets, diverse faiths, and powerful kingdoms. It was never an isolated wasteland. History, as we know, literally never begins in a vacuum.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder as we wrap things up today. If history never begins in a vacuum, and every civilization is built squarely on the shoulders of those that came before it, well, what modern foundations are being built today? What unseen cultural, technological, or political shifts are we establishing right now in our own highly connected world that will become the bedrock for the generations of tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this topic. I hope you walk away with a totally new perspective on the ancient cradle of sands.